What's the one thing that if you had it, you would decrease the amount of time it takes to get business and increase the profitability while reducing the cost? Welcome to Supply Chain Today. Today we're talking about trust, more specifically, the speed of trust, with the author, Stephen M.R. Covey.
Wow, thank you, Ralph. It's great to see you again and to be with you. We had a couple of conferences together, and I'm delighted to be here on this special show for Supply Chain.
Hey, listen, my Supply Chain Today audience has seen you a couple of times, but for those who haven't or don't remember, I just want to remind them, I have Stephen M.R. Covey, who is the author of this book, The Speed of Trust. It is a New York Times best-selling book, but more importantly, it is about the subject that all of us keep asking about, and that is, what can I do to better connect with my clients? What can I do to have better business? And I believe it is what Stephen writes about in his book about trust. And to give you an illustration of that, when Stephen and I first met, one of the things that I read about in the book was how when you have trust, you reduce the amount of time it takes to do business with one another. And then at the same time, it increases the profitability because you've spent less money. And that resonated with me as an executive, and it resonated with the other executives. So Stephen, the first thing I want to talk about is, how does that work and what does it look like?
Yeah, I'm glad you started with that, because this is kind of the key compelling reason why this topic matters to us as supply chain professionals, as executives, is that there's a compelling business case for trust. Because usually when you say, hey, we got to build trust, everyone kind of nods, rolls their heads. Yeah, of course, that's nice, and apple pie, and it sounds good. And I try to shift the paradigm and say, trust is not just some nice, soft, warm and fuzzy social virtue. Trust is a hard-edged economic driver. And here's why. Because it affects the speed at which we can move and the cost of everything. So when trust goes down in a relationship, on a team, in a company, in a culture, or with a partner, in a supply chain, when the trust goes down, here's what you will always find. Everything will take you longer to do, the speed goes down, and the cost goes up. Everything will cost you more to do, a lot more. Now that is a tax. It's a low trust tax. It's a wasted tax. And it does impact profitability. It ultimately impacts value. And we all know, we've all been there. In low trust relationships, it takes you longer, it costs you more, you are taxed, metaphorically. Here's the good news. When the trust goes up in that relationship, on the team, in the company, in the culture, with your partners, in your supply chain, when the trust goes up, the speed goes up with it. You can do everything faster. The cost comes down. It costs you less. Now that is a dividend, a high trust dividend. And my friends, it's that simple, that powerful, and that predictable. And the dividends are also all around us. So just think of when you have built high trust in a relationship, on a team, in a supply chain, with partners, and there's trust, mutual trust between each other, how you can move exceptionally fast, low cost. Speed happens when people trust each other, and nothing is as fast as the speed of trust. And here's the final kind of output of this is that in a couple of different studies, they came to the same conclusion, which is this, that high trust organizations outperform low trust organizations by about 3 times in total return to shareholders. Why? Because they get far greater speed and far lower costs, and ultimately you can monetize that. You can put an economic value on it. So trust is a performance multiplier of about 3x. And that usually gets people's attention, that this is not just some warm and fuzzy. This is an economic driver that yields greater profitability and greater value.
And I have to tell you, that is a remarkable way to explain what it is that I knew the minute I read this book. But it does then lend itself to the next question, and that is, why is it so elusive? When I think about trust, and as a producer, as you mentioned early, that we have worked together, and I have had to pitch you to the board or to the committee, one of the things I found myself having to get into once I've explained the business case was the elusiveness of trust. And I almost equate it to like faith, hope, love. People know those feelings. They know those things. And then when I add trust to it, people say, yeah, I get that. But for whatever reason, the business case is sound, it's solid, and you put it really well. But why does it elude them?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of the flip side of this business case. See, the business case is taking something that's seen as soft, trust, and showing, in fact, that it's hard-edged. It's economic, it's financial. You just have to view it through new lens, and there's strong data that shows it. The same thing is true with what we're describing of kind of this, the idea that trust is just this elusive, intangible,
Right,
that you can't get your arms around. And the basic premise is that you either have it or you don't. It's either there or it's not. And if we don't have it, there's nothing we can do about it. And I'm saying, no, trust is something that you can quantify, you can identify, you can measure, you can move, you can look at the dimensions of it, the components behind it. And in fact, you can get good at building trust on purpose. I like to say that trust is a learnable skill, a competency that you can become exceptionally good at. Now that's a paradigm shift, to the person that says, hey, you either have trust or you don't. And I'm saying, no, it's learnable. So yes, maybe we're at a low starting point or a medium starting point or even high, but in the same way that you can diminish and lose trust through your behavior, you can also consciously, deliberately create it, grow it, expand it, extend it, and even in some cases, restore it through your behavior. And in fact, you can get good at this. And that's where I spend the bulk of my time on presentations, and in my Speed of Trust book is on the how. How do you build trust? Through your credibility and through your behavior, so that you can make this idea that everyone kind of gets at a surface level, but they say that it's too elusive, it's intangible. And I'm saying, no, we can make this tangible, practical, actionable, learnable for each of us as a leader. And that's really where the magic is in this, is to say that trust is learnable, and to give people a framework so they can think about it, a language so they can talk about it, and a process of how they can build it intentionally. That's what's exciting.
Wow, Stephen, that's really, really impactful. I couldn't agree more. And we'll be right back.
So there's one to many, there's many to one. At conferences, trade shows, and summits, we have a captive audience of many. So how do they know about the one? Today's tactic is to encourage you and to maybe even advise you to be thinking about doing things whenever you have decided to exhibit at a show or attend a conference or maybe even sponsor one. I think one of the things we have to start thinking about is using the technology to enhance the human interaction that we have at these things. Because what I've uncovered over the last few years is people still want to get with people, but we can enhance that using other technology. And one of the things I'm seeing is how people use video and commercials, for example, as one of those ways of using technology. But there's many. There's network apps out there. There's conference apps. So the encouragement is to look at the technology that can help bring you, the one, to the many who are there, that would give them more of an idea of why they would want to further connect with you. And get with your team and talk about that. I think you could come up with something fun to be able to do that. And that is your tactic for the day.
Welcome back to Supply Chain Today. Today we have Stephen M.R. Covey, the author of The Speed of Trust, a New York Times best-selling book. Talk to us a little bit about counterfeit trust and what we should think about there.
Yeah. Here's the idea behind this is that trust is built and created through our credibility, who we are, and through our behavior, how we behave, how we interact with people. And where the counterfeit idea comes in is that there can be, counterfeit behavior that looks real, but is really inauthentic. And it has another agenda. It's kind of like passive aggressive behavior, or it's kind of like a behavior that builds trust, for example, is to talk straight. Now, the opposite of that is when you kind of lie, and that's obvious. That's not going to build trust. But if you talk straight, that's authentic. That's real. You tell the truth, that will build trust. The counterfeit is when you spin, where you twist, when you manipulate, where you posture, where you, quote, technically tell the truth, but you leave the wrong impression. And I've identified 13 behaviors in the speed of trust that are authentic trust-building behaviors. And the biggest danger to each of them is not so much the opposite behavior, it's more the counterfeit behavior, because it looks real. It looks like it's going to work, but it's fake, it's artificial, and it won't build trust in the long run. And that's the biggest danger, is the counterfeit. And counterfeit trust is not sustainable, and it's not authentic, it's not real. But again, this is not just kind of words. We have to behave our way into trust, just like we behave our way out of it. So we talk straight, we demonstrate respect, we create transparency, we right wrongs, we show loyalty, we deliver results, we get better, meaning continuously improve, we confront reality, we clarify expectations, we practice accountability, we listen first, we keep commitments, and we extend trust. Now, without labeling them, I just went through 13 behaviors. Wow. And there's an opposite for those behaviors, and there's a dangerous counterfeit. So the counterfeit behavior to extending trust is when you give a fake trust. It's when you tell people, hey, I trust you, I really trust you. You tell them that, and then you hover over them, and you micromanage their every move. So your words say one thing, your actions say another. See, that's a counterfeit, an artificial. And what comes through is the actions, not the words. And it causes people to say, no, this is just lip service. It's not real. It's not authentic. And that's our biggest danger, because, is counterfeit behavior can easily become kind of the cultural norm inside of an organization where everyone's spinning. There's hidden agendas operating everywhere. Everyone is, instead of taking responsibility and owning it, they're finger pointing, playing the blame game. And as a result, trust goes down. So we've got to behave our way into trust, just like you can behave your way out of trust. And that's, again, it comes back to kind of making trust tangible, making it practical and actionable through a language, through a framework, through a process to build trust on purpose, and to especially avoid those dangerous counterfeits that can trip so many of us up.
Wow. And again, I am here with Stephen M.R. Covey, the author of The Speed of Trust, a New York Times best-selling book, but more importantly, a subject that I believe every person in the supply chain, whether you're in the C-suite or the engineering or the operations area, needs to read, because it is so important for us to have this both internally and externally in our business. Stephen, before I let you go, I'd be remiss if I didn't talk about where we are right now with the pandemic and the culture and milieu of these organizations that have just absolutely shifted because of what we're going through. And I believe now the audience is getting a sense for how important this subject is in doing business. But talk a little bit about how important it is with where we are right now as a country in the supply chain space, and then as we move forward and get through some of this.
Yes, I would say this, that trust has always been critical, essential, but never more so than during times of crisis and disruption like we're going through today. And that's true within your industry, within the supply chain, but it's also true in almost every industry, that during times of change, of disruption, of transition, of crisis, more than ever before, trust is our currency that helps us navigate during this, through this VUCA environment of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. More than ever before, we need trust. During times of crisis and disruption, the greatest currency that we have as leaders is the trust that others have in us. The greatest asset we have as a leader is our credibility. And the greatest power that we have as leaders is our ability to extend and give that trust to others and see them receive it and return it and reciprocate it and build it. And right now, with all that's going on, there's a great opportunity to actually build more trust, even in spite of the crisis, because of the opportunities that are in front of us where we can show our people that we trust them. Not blindly, but I call it smart trust with expectations and accountability, but we can extend it on purpose. And so trust has always mattered, but never more so than during times of crisis and disruption. Trust is our new currency, and it is especially the currency within the supply chain. So let me just give you one last concluding thought that we'll talk about going forward. I'll never forget, Ralph, one of the conferences that you invited me to speak at, supply chain conference. It might have been a materials handling and logistics conference. I forget the exact one, but I read a document that was produced by a think tank, within the industry that talked about the road forward, the path ahead, and the things that have to happen. And they came up with two overarching conclusions, which were these. In order to navigate the new way forward, we're going to need two things. The first is technology, and the second is trust. And then they went on to say this: we are confident that we will have the technology needed to move forward and to find our way forward because of all the advances in technology. We're confident we'll figure that one out. We're not near as confident that we will have the trust needed to move forward. The trust in our relationships, on our teams, in our cultures, in our supply chain. And that's why this is so vital, because it is trust that will move us forward. It is trust that turns mere coordination within a supply chain into true collaboration, creative, innovative collaboration. Without trust, you don't collaborate, you merely coordinate. Trust turns coordination into collaboration. It can change everything. And it's really what is needed today. It is our new currency for the kind of collaboration that's needed today in supply chains, especially with all the dynamics that are placed upon us. And so, yes, we have the technology to operate in the way forward. The question is whether we have the trust. And I think we can gain that trust, earn that trust, build, create, establish that trust intentionally, and have that be a great asset to move us forward. So in a sense, trust is the ultimate collaboration tool.
Wow, what a wonderful way to wrap this up. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate it. And I also can't tell you how often that I have over the years when people have asked me, Ralph, what can I work on? What's the thing that I can do to better penetrate the market or to better engage with everyone? And I am not kidding. I always recommend that they read your book, The Speed of Trust, because in addition to having great products and great services, if we don't have trust, it's going to be a very difficult road to hoe. So I will recommend again to this audience, as fast as you are capable, to get the book, The Speed of Trust, to read that and to learn how you can grow trust. Stephen, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for being a part of this, but more importantly, thank you for giving us something we can really work on to help our businesses and help ourselves both professionally and personally. I am confident people will benefit from this conversation.
You are welcome, Ralph, and thank you for this opportunity. It's great to see you again, and it's great to be with your viewers of Supply Chain Today. I'm really honored. Thank you.